On today's show, we're discussing self-publishing versus traditional publishing. So stay tuned.
Hi, welcome to the Christian Indie Writers Podcast, where we inform, encourage, and support Christian indie writers on their journey to publication. I'm Jamie Hirschberger, and I write short fiction under the pen name J.R. Nichols.
I'm Jennifer Carl Tong, and I write historical Christian romance.
I'm Christina Cattane, and I write Christian dystopian fantasy.
And we are down one host for the time being, Miss Rhonda, who writes under the pen name Dee Dee Bowman. Many thoughts and prayers to her as she's taking a little hiatus from our podcast. But we love and miss her. Watching that opening, it's just not the same without all of us. But I love you gals, and I love our chatters also. If you are able to come and watch the show live at 10 o'clock Eastern, we have a very active chat community. And if we don't know something, they typically do. So come and join us if you have any questions about the topic or really anything else. Our chats, they're usually really happy to weigh in with their opinions, right? Oh, we've got Barbara already. Good morning, Barbara. And can't wait to see who else joins us. But we also, Maria's here too.
And so is Liz. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. We are so grateful for not just our live listeners, but also for all of you listening on iTunes or any of the other platforms. Our one listener on Stitcher. We really appreciate you.
We really want to know who you are.
Yeah.
Okay, so a little bit of background is that we were able to go figure out something. Like, we don't really pay attention to that kind of stuff, but we decided to look, and we have listeners, a lot of listeners on Apple and Apple Podcasts and on Google Podcasts and all over the place. Spotify, a lot of people are listening. Stitcher, we have one person. So that was just really funny to us.
Yeah, it was like, who is this mystery listener? We've got BB and Shell joining us today.
Morning,
that's
everyone.
awesome. But we appreciate all of you. If you like what we do, and you can do so, we'd really appreciate if you like and subscribe and click all of the buttons and share what we're doing, so even more people can be encouraged and supported through
even on Stitcher.
the work. Yeah. And also you can go to our website and subscribe to our newsletter. That will make sure that you never miss a single episode of the Christian Indie Writers Podcast. So we start every episode with a segment we call What's Up? It's time to check in with one another and see where we are in our personal lives. So what's up with you? Jen, do you want to go first, or do you want to?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'll go first. Okay, so life's been crappy lately. I know that I've talked about that. I hope I don't offend anybody with the word crap, because I learned recently that some people are offended by that. Like, they think it's a swear word. I'm like, so I'm really sorry, because I use it a lot. But life has been just kind of like, but this week I decided, the past 2 weeks actually, I did the Amazon ads challenge with Brian Cohen. For those, there might be some of you out there that's doing it as well.
And that's like his free one, right?
It's the free one.
Every once in a while, like he'll do it. Yeah. Every few months. Yeah.
Like 4 times a year. If you haven't done it, it's well worth it to do it. Like, they give a lot of information.
Yeah. Good stuff for no charge, for sure.
Right. And so I've been doing that, but my ads are not only, they're not getting any traction, like they're not even, Amazon's not delivering them up at all. And they say, just keep putting out ads. And finally, one of the ad experts that works with Brian Cohen said to me, he's like, all right, let's give it one more day. And if it's not happening, then I'm going to have you send me some screenshots. We're trying to figure out what's wrong. So there's clearly something going on. So that's been a little bit frustrating. But as I was doing all this and looking, I got another new review, which, it happens. Like, I get reviews, so it's not like it should be a shock. And it was someone I don't know at all. And it was a very nice review that the person said, they came across the book and they couldn't put it down. They literally read it in one day because they couldn't stop. Now that's a high compliment. If you're a writer, like I don't know that there's any better compliment than that. And it just struck me that it wasn't that long ago when I released this book and I was just sitting here at the screen looking, waiting for these people that I knew that said, yeah, I'll read your book and give you a review. And they didn't. And like every review meant something, right? And I was just like frustrated because I just 10 reviews, come on. And now I'm up in the hundreds and I'm like over 300 reviews, which thank you, Lord. It's a huge blessing. And so now it's not so imperative every time I get a review, but when I do, it's still important, right? And it really kind of made my day when I realized I don't even know this person. And so the encouragement I want for everyone to hear is that if you're at that point and you're struggling for reviews or you're getting ready to publish, like we all were there. Like, don't get discouraged. Don't look at my book and say, well, I'm never going to have 300 reviews. Yeah, you will. Like, that's what I felt like a few years ago. And here I am with a bunch of reviews and people that I don't even know buy my book, coming across my books. And also, I went on this morning to YouTube. I had been kind of ignoring things, and there were a bunch of comments on our videos, ladies. There are people that do not watch live with us. And if you don't, you're crazy. But it's a lot of fun over here on Fridays. But there were some really great comments. And I thought, you know what? Like, there's a lot of, we're doing a lot of good for people out there. And we forget about that because we're just having a good time doing this. And we just appreciate all of you. And I just want to say that to be encouraging to you ladies as well, is that sometimes it feels like we're like just kind of trudging along here and not getting any traction. And are people even listening to us? Does it really matter? And it does. And there are people that are like encouraged by us. And I just wanted you ladies to know that. So
that's awesome.
Thanks for the comments and reviews, everybody. We really do appreciate it.
Yes. And if you feel that we, aren't responsive, it's really just because we don't pay attention like we should to some
We're
of
just
that
volunteers.
Stuff. Yeah.
Well, actually, we pay to be on here. Like, so
we joke that we're homemade and we're not slick or fancy, and we don't have somebody running our social media. Anyway, we just kind of are bad at it. So please don't take it personally. We feel bad, but not bad enough to change, I guess.
It's life. We have lots of things happening right now because we're following our own advice, right? Like, life is happening. And if you listen to our podcast, you know what's going on in a lot of our lives. But also our advice is write the book. Like, don't get distracted by this other stuff. So ultimately, we have to focus on our books first. And so that's what we're doing. We're just following our own advice, right?
Yes.
Barbara says, y'all help recharge the batteries. I appreciate that.
Oh, that's so great. We've got some WhatsApps. Liz Henderson says her book is with an editor. That's huge. Congratulations. What a big step. That's so great. And then Maria says she finished her newsletter novel.
Yay.
This is so great for her because she's been trying to have something to give away as her newsletter reader magnet. She says she put it on Story Origin, shared cover and trailer on social media, getting ready for the release on the 7th of May. On 7th May, how very British. Also making good progress with Camp NaNoWriMo Go. Oh, goodness. Is that happening? I think I'm a little behind.
I think your release date is awesome, though.
Yeah.
Very awesome for that date to be released. Just saying.
Is that your birthday?
Yep.
And way to go, Maria. Barbara's giving you a big woo-hoo. We're very impressed by your dedication. Maria is working so hard to crack the marketing nut, and I know that she's going to have a big return on that. So you should maybe check out her books and see if it's something that you'd be interested in reading. She writes historical and good stuff. Okay, so I will do my what's up next. It's just basically I have a friend coming to visit me. I'm going to have house guests. My friend and her daughter are coming, and that's always fun because my home is in Florida, but my heart is in Michigan, and miss my community up there. So it's always nice when someone comes to visit. So I've had some furnishing, home furnishing to make people comfortable to come for a visit, dilemmas that I've been able to overcome, and looking forward to having my buddy come hang out with me.
Awesome.
And what's your what's up for this week, Miss Tina?
Well, I've been going back and forth as whether I should talk about my career what's up or my personal what's up. So I'm going to try to put them both in one. I'm going to see if I can work it out. So my daughter got married. Her May 5th is her 5th anniversary, and she was told that she had a 2% chance to get pregnant. She had some fertility issues, and so we've been praying and praying and praying. And about 9 weeks ago, my son-in-law went on a men's retreat with his church, and all the men came around him and laid hands on him and prayed that they would get pregnant. And he ran right home and made good on that prayer because my daughter is 9 weeks pregnant.
Yay!
So excited for her.
Yes, me too. And so she came over yesterday, and was here all day. So I didn't get much done, but the day before, I finished my book cover. It's done. I uploaded it to
Yay!
Amazon. Um, I, g- you know, there are 7 layers in my title on Photoshop. If you know about Photoshop, like 7 layers. It's like the L is its own layer, or the A, it's alone, and the D, and then like the one. So there's 7 layers, and I have the title on my book 3 times. And I spent so much time like moving it a fraction of a centimeter here, and a fraction. Like I just could not look at the thing anymore, and I'm so glad that it's done. And then Wednesday night, I got my manuscript back for its final edits that I have to fix, and then I couldn't do it yesterday. It's just like because I'm so distractible, and my daughter was there, and the HVAC people were coming. So the lady came to do like the routine annual maintenance on it because I need an air conditioner here in the tropics of Michigan. I can't survive without it.
Mhm.
And but I really need an advanced team. I need some more people in my advanced team. So if you'd like to get a free copy, an ebook copy of my book to read in advance of publication, if you'd like to be on that list, you can go to ChristinaCattane.com and sign up for my newsletter. I'm going to be sending out a newsletter tomorrow morning with the link to sign up to be on my advanced team. Or I'm also going to put a link in the description box below this broadcast.
What's the responsibility you're asking for people?
Just to read the book, and then if they would be so kind as to leave me a review on Amazon, that would be wonderful.
All right.
I'm looking for reviews, but I can't demand them, but I'm asking, please.
Okay.
That's
All
it.
right. So we've got everybody's what's up, and now it's time to move into our topic of the day, which is self-publishing versus traditional publishing. And we wanted to talk about this today because it's been a while since we addressed the issue, and things are so different now than when we first started this podcast. And we did do an episode about this way in our early days, but things are different, and it's time to recover this ground. And the first thing that we wanted to talk about is, why did we individually start off on the self-publishing route? And I don't particularly care who goes first. Who wants to share first? Tina, why don't you tell us why you decided to self-publish versus traditionally publish?
Well, I guess the bottom line would be I'm a control freak.
Mhm,
It
mhm.
really was about the creative control. I wanted to have creative control over everything, including my covers, including my blurbs, how the marketing gets done, the content of the stories, everything. I really just wanted to control it all. And the idea of like sending my manuscript off to be rejected over and over again like was a huge trigger for me for
Mm.
some of my emotional issues from my in my life, and I just knew that I was not going to be respond well to having hundreds of rejections, and so that's another issue too for me.
What about you, Jamie? What made you choose to go indie?
Peer pressure.
All right, let's start there because so
Uh,
you originally thought you were going to go trad, correct?
well, I had pitched my one of my books to some agents. And I had gotten rejections, and only one agent who gave me any feedback as to why I was getting a rejection. And I took that feedback to heart, and I thought, well, this person is probably right. And so I knew because famously, as Ira Glass says, famously, you aren't as good as you want to be when you start out. So I knew that what I was writing was not the caliber of work that I wanted to be writing, but I thought it was good enough to be published by someone. So to get the feedback of like, no, this work isn't ready, didn't really surprise me. And
Mhm.
so I knew I had work to do, not necessarily in that book, but just like as a writer in general to become the writer that I wanted to be. And I did believe in the whole gatekeeping system. I believed that if you could get a publisher to publish your book, that meant you were a good writer.
Mhm.
And people who were indie publishing were doing so because they couldn't ever get good enough to get a publisher to publish them. That's really what I believed.
I think
And
we all believe that to
as
begin
I
with. Yeah.
as I sat around talking to people who were not wanting to take the traditional publishing route for many reasons, they slowly chipped away at how I was thinking about things because of things like Tina said, and because of Jen, you're going to say some reasons why you decided to go indie.
Mhm.
And after hearing all of those things and understanding that self-publishing is not vanity press, like learning the nuances, I just basically was talked into it, to be honest. And it was really a scary decision at the time because my understanding was once you self-publish, no publisher will ever touch you. Like that's what they were saying back in the day when I was first thinking about becoming an author, because a lot of the gatekeepers of the publishing world did see self-publishing authors as people who were not good enough to get publishing. Like that's really what the landscape looked like. Am I wrong? Like
Mm.
that's what people were saying back then, is that you'll never be touched. So to me, it really seemed like a great big huge decision that was going to like ruin my life if I chose wrong.
Mhm.
But I just went that way mostly for the reasons Tina cited and the reasons that Jen is going to give, is because I heard these arguments and gave thought that they were true and right and spoke to me. And so I
Mhm.
just basically was talked into it. And so what about you, Jen?
So yeah, much like Jamie, I had this image in my mind of what self-publishing was, and that traditional publishing was the golden ticket, right? Like if you were a good writer, you got picked up by a book company, and if you weren't a good writer, then you would go self-publish. That's kind of how like I kind of felt about it, and I feel like that's how the traditional publishers still kind of like make it feel. But I had been reading online and in different writing groups I was in, and I had and other podcasts I listened to. I had heard that there were no longer writing bonuses. Like it was very rare to get a writing bonus, which a signing bonus, excuse me, which is like one of the reasons why you'd want to go trad publishing. But if they're taking that away, right? And I knew it was going to take like 2 years after the completion of the novel, which like kind of was nauseating. Like you finish a novel, you're excited, and then you have to wait 2 more years to see if like they're even going to pick up your next one. So you have to keep writing and hope that they will. And um, so, but ultimately, what happened for me was I walked into the local Christian bookstore, a big chain Christian bookstore, because I thought I was ready for a new book. I wanted to read some new authors. I was kind of like only reading like these authors I'd known my whole life. I'm like, let me go find someone new. So I went in there and I went down to the Christian romance aisle and I picked up a couple of books that looked good to me. And I got home and I realized one of them was book two. I don't know how I missed that because they had the two really small instead of making it obvious. So I went on to Amazon because they didn't have book one there. This was the only book from this author. So I went on to Amazon to order book one and realized that book three in this series had just released like the day before. And there was nothing in the bookstore about it. the book wasn't there, number one. There were no posters, nothing. And then I went on and found out that this author was like one of their new upcoming flagship authors that this label had out, and they had done no marketing within the stores. I could find nothing online marketing her except for something little on their website. So you have to go to their website to look for it. And it just really started to like bother me. And I realized I did some more research and found out that like marketing was almost non-existent from traditional publishers. Like that was all on the shoulders of the authors. I had been reading some books from traditional publishers that were the editing was terrible. And I was like, this is a trad published book. And they're saying that like self-published is bad. And the whole waiting for 2 years, and I still was struggling with it. But in my mind, I'm like, well, to be successful, I need to be picked up by Zondervan or Bethany House or, these Christian publishing houses. And I was on my way to have breakfast with a friend at Cracker Barrel, nonetheless. And God really spoke to me and said, all these things. Why are you still holding on to a traditional publishing idea? Like, and it stopped me in my tracks. Like, God, I just started praying about it. And I said, all right, Lord, show me what I'm supposed to do. And in the coming weeks, he started opening up doors and helping me see the advantages of self-publishing. And I realized that, like Tina said, I was the kind of person that needed control. I wanted to pick up my covers. That was the other thing. Book 3 had a terrible cover on this series for this woman. It was terrible. It didn't even match the character. And it made me so angry. And I felt bad for this author. She's still a really great author out there. And she like they do promote her a little bit more, but she had to do all the legwork at the beginning. And she probably didn't get a signing bonus for that. So like all these things added together. The timeline of having to wait for 2 years. I didn't want to do that. The lack of marketing from the traditional publishers. Like that's the whole point, right? Is I want them to do my editing and marketing and my book cover, but that's part of it, and I want them to pay me. Well, if they're not going to pay me and I'm going to hate the book cover and they're not going to market it, why would I be going that way? It was God pointed out to me. This is ultimately where it came to. God pointed out to me that it was my own ego. My own ego was the reason why I want to go traditionally published. I'm not saying anybody who's traditionally published is egotistical, but the guy pointed out to me that for me personally, it was my ego that was going trad published when he had given me all this information that I was supposed to go self-published. But I still was fighting to go traditional and publish. And that's when
because you wanted to have that badge of I got picked up by a trad pub, right? Like you wanted to be able to say that you got this brass ring thing, right? Like,
yeah. And that's when I just laid it at his feet and said, all right, Lord, this is yours. This is yours right now. And so, fast forward, my book. Oh, you couldn't do newsletter giveaways or first free in series, things that we've just recently talked about here in the podcast. You can go back and see those episodes.
Yeah, I'm saying
you can't do those if the company owns those books, right? So fast forward, my free first in series, they eventually made a free first in series for the author. My book is ranked higher than her 2 free first in series. And she's traditionally published and has a lot of marketing dollars behind her and is a good writer. So again, I know I made the right decision for me. And there's lots of reasons why, but that was a long story to tell you that, it was really God pointing out to me that I had to lose my ego and put my trust of my novels in him, not in some publishing house's name.
And I guess you could say it was my ego that made me not want to traditionally publish because I knew that I couldn't handle, like I have these abandonment issues and I knew I couldn't handle rejection. And so I just never tried until I heard about self-publishing. And then I started researching it and all that stuff that you said and the realization that I could be published and be in complete control. And the only rejection I would get is the people that wouldn't buy my book and I wouldn't even know. Right? Like I
Right.
wouldn't know it personally that somebody had looked and said, "No, that sounds stupid. I'm not reading it."
Right.
So, like for me, that was so freeing, and I'm like, "I'm doing it."
Mm-hmm.
Maria brings up something we're going to be talking about sort of next. She's talking
Right.
about her solution. And so our second point on our agenda is what would entice any of us away from indie publishing? And what I wrote is, things are way different now than they were when I started out. Like I mentioned before, like Jen, you were talking about first and free and newsletter giveaways, and even like email lists were pretty new. Like we're talking years ago that we all started
Right.
on this journey, right?
Right.
Before I even met you ladies, so we're talking like 5 or more years ago, things just changed so fast. But there weren't all of these options out there. There's things like small press now. So do you know how many publishing houses and presses that exist that didn't exist when I was making this decision? Maybe I would have reconsidered being independent, and I might have decided to be like a hybrid author, which is where you self-publish and then you sub one to a traditional publishing house. Or maybe I would go with a small press or something like that. So I guess if the question on the table is what would entice us away from indie publishing, I mean, I think I'll go with you, Jen, first, because I think you have the strictest kind of parameters of what it would take to entice you, don't you?
Cash, money, money, cash, cash. That would be the number one thing was if a traditional publisher came to me with the right amount of money, I would sell a book to them. Now, not my books that are already out. They're not interested in those. Because one thing that is still true is that if you self-publish a book, a traditional publisher is no longer interested in that book. They might still be interested in you as a writer, but not that book. I would, if they had the right amount of money, I would consider it. Another thing I have considered is a publishing house like Hallmark. If Hallmark were to approach me, or I were to be able to get a Hallmark deal, which would also include possibly a movie deal along with it, the exposure that would come from that would bring people back to my other books would be something that I would feel is definitely worth giving up my rights to one or more of my books in order to get the exposure for all the rest. So that would be those would be the two things, or foreign rights. Like I'd be willing to sign a traditional deal with a company that would be, that would take on, like the translation of my books and like that, but not audio. I'm never giving up audio. I'm never giving up the rest of this stuff. But so that's where I'm at. What about you, Tina? Do you have any like list of things of why you would go trad?
Okay, first of all, they would have to come to me. I would never go searching them out.
Okay.
And just like you said, they would have to offer me something completely awesome that I would consider giving up my control. Movie deal or a lot of money.
A lot of money. It comes down to a lot of money.
Well, and if I got one book like if a traditional publisher came and said, we're going to give you all this money to write this one book, like maybe I could do one book for them, and that money could underpin the stuff that I'm going to self-publish. But I just know, like, I did some ghostwriting in the beginning of wanting to be a writer for a living, and I ghost wrote one fiction. Just somebody wanted me to write a 5,000 word beginning of a novel for them. And so I wrote this 5,000 word story. And so basically it's theirs. My name's nowhere on it because I ghost wrote it. And it was so painful. It was so incredible. And it was just a silly little story about a dog traveling through the woods trying to make it home to his master, kind of Lassie come home kind of stuff. But it was so painful to give that away that I don't like they would really have to offer me something big for me to be able to do it.
Okay, and I'm going to say this like it's kind of a long answer. Before I continue, I want to clarify, just like Maria Johnson, that there are small presses There's a difference between being indie publishing, like a small press, and a self-publishing. Like, we don't want anyone to feel like our language is meant to be exclusionary today. There's a lot of reasons I would do like what Maria is doing and publish through a small press, that, like, say, her particular small press, because she is somebody who is someone that I can trust what she's going through, and I know that they're not scammy or something like that. And those reasons are the following: editing and covers. Okay. If you do not have the skills to do your own book cover, you will never sell a book with an amateur cover the way that you would sell a book with a really good cover. And if you don't want to pay for your own cover, and you don't want to have to worry about designing something that will sell, and you can get a publishing deal where they will do the cover for you, and if you can get a publishing deal where they will do not just check for commas and punctuation, but good developmental editing, those things are very expensive. And a lot of people don't want to fork out that kind of money just to get their book published somewhere. And they don't want to take a chance on publishing their homemade version of a cover. And, well, there's typos, but get over it. People who aren't comfortable with that, the ideal of going with a small press is very appealing. You do give up some control, whatever, but those are things that you balance with not having to have that initial cash output of doing that editing and doing that cover. So those things are things that would make me consider, if I didn't have resources like I have. I have people where I can barter, because I have a talent for developmental editing, and I can barter with that to get my covers made. So that's what would be alluring to me. As far as the position that I'm in right this moment, I don't know. I will almost feel like I will continue doing what I'm doing, or I will once again seek out a traditional publishing situation, mostly because I feel what the small presses have to offer me doesn't monetarily compensate me for the control I would have to give up, because I have figured out a way to borrow, beg, barter the things done that I think I need to get done to put out a product that I'm proud of. But a traditional publisher is just going to have a reach and a marketing ability that small presses just can't touch. I do understand that, you're still expected to do your own social media. You're still expected to have your own platform, so to speak. But to be honest, the power that those trad pub houses have to actually get your book in front of people is the only alluring thing that I can see about doing anything other than what I'm doing right now. Getting people's eyes actually looking at my book. And I haven't tried to do it myself yet, really. I haven't had a novel published that I've tried to market myself. So that opinion could maybe even change over time if it turns out, well, it's not that bad to try to do it for yourself.
Agreed.
So,
and if you're
that's where I'm at.
considering a small press, we do have some questions we think that you need to make sure you ask. Like, don't just, I see so often in some of the groups that I'm in, people are so excited because a publishing house wants to publish their book. But they've never heard of this publishing house. Just, you know what I mean? So, Maria, if you have questions, you can come in our chat and chat with Maria. She has had a good experience with a small press. There's a lot of people that haven't had with other small presses. So there's questions you have to ask. Like, again, like what Jamie brought up, like book cover. Will you have input with your book cover? Do they make all the editing decisions, or do you have to take all of their editing suggestions? Marketing. Who does the marketing? How much marketing will your book get? Because remember, these people, like, it's not just a, yay, they want to publish my book. They're going to make money off of you. So this is a business contract, and you need to ask these questions. How long do they retain rights to the book? Do they get rights forever? Or is there a time period on this? Are there any contingencies? If you don't sell a certain number of books, do the rights revert back to you? And I would say that if that's not in there, you need to ask that to be in there, because there's a lot of publishing houses that have gone under, these small presses that have gone under, and people cannot get their rights back because this company still owns them, yet the company is not doing any more publishing work. So make sure that's in there, some sort of contingency where if the company goes under, or if they don't sell a certain number of books, that you get your rights back. Do they have any film or other rights like ebooks snuck into the contract? You don't want any film rights or any ebook rights in your contract with a small press publisher.
I've heard some horror stories about authors who had their books made into movies and the movies made millions, but they got nothing because it was owned by the publishing company.
And it was in small print and they were just so excited to get a publishing deal, they signed it. Yep. So at the end of the day, really, you're the only person that knows what's right for you. We've chosen to self-publish. There are people in our chat that, like Maria, that have gone with small press. There are people that are going to go traditionally published. We have listeners that are traditionally published, but and a lot of followers on Twitter and Instagram and everywhere else that are traditionally published, but are still getting some information from us. So everyone's going to have a different route. You just have to understand what's right for you and do your research.
And as far as Tina had said, well, they would have to come to me. Be especially scrutinous, is that the right word, of any publishing company that does reach out to you, especially if you're an unknown author who's not even published yet and you've just kind of been on messaging boards, or you've just kind of been in the writing community for a while. If a publishing house is reaching out to you, pay extra close attention. Compare the name to websites and lists such as Writer Beware, to make sure that this is a company that you would want to be doing business with.
And I would be extra suspicious of any publishing company that has a commercial on TV looking for authors, because there are so many authors out there looking for publishers. They should not have to advertise on TV if they're legitimate.
Agreed. So if a company, we're going to talk about this next week. Actually, next week's topic is going to be vanity publishing. So I just feel in my heart, I just am here right now to rescue all of these good Christian people that are being scammed by these vanity publishing houses that look like a regular small press or a regular publishing company. So stay tuned next week. But Maria also brings up something I want to address. She says, excellent questions, Jen, to bear in mind. Also to read every contract. I would say try to make it so you keep your rights. I've kept the copyright to my books. Just to clarify, copyright and right to publish are two different things. You can keep the copyright and they still have the right to publish it. Again, I would probably Maria probably did this. I would contact a lawyer. Any contract, it doesn't hurt to have a lawyer, especially someone that knows entertainment, to read it over, because this is your legacy, right? You wrote this book, you put a lot of time and effort into this. So if you're going to go with a small press and they're going to pay for like your book covers and your editing, things that you didn't want to pay for, you could pay a little bit of money for a lawyer to make sure that it's being done right. That's my 2 cents. So
I agree.
All right. So I think we probably exhausted the topic. Would you ladies agree?
Yes, I'm kind of excited and nervous about next week. We might offend some people, but I'm pretty used to that, as my Julia Sugarbaker will come out, I'm sure.
If we offend you, please post everywhere on social media. ChristianIndieWriters.net is so offensive. Go to every social platform you are on and make sure you put ChristianIndieWriters.net is the most offensive show I've ever listened to.
That's awesome.
And tell them they have to come see for themselves.
Yeah,
that's how offensive we
You'll
are.
never believe it unless you've watched all 100-something episodes, how offensive these ladies are. In fact, you should write your own terrible review. Okay, so it's time to I gotta say, Maria said, sorry if I took all the topic time mentioning small press. No, Maria,
it was on our outline.
We absolutely value you, because again, when we were making these decisions, we did not have these options. It was easier on the one hand because it was this or this, but on the other hand, it sure felt life-changing. It sure felt like I was condemning myself to forever be obscure, because now no trad pub will ever touch me, is how I felt the first time I hit publish, and it really felt like a world-ending situation. So good for y'all if you're just getting into the game right now, that you have so many different ways to cross the finish line. So it's time for a lot of our listeners' favorite portion of our podcast. It's called the Feeding of the Backs. The what? It's called the Feeding of the Backs because we used to bring our work to a real live writing group, and we used to sit and give constructive feedback about the piece to one another. And then I would look at someone and say, well, is your back well fed? Did you get enough feedback? Ha ha. So we jokingly call this the Feeding of the Backs. Well, we only get desserts and goodies to feed our backs here because we are getting feedback on live writing sprints that we do just before we go on the air. We set a timer for 15 minutes and we write to a predetermined prompt that we all have forgotten about between the meeting and the day that we're supposed to write, and sometimes blank out on even when it's time to go. So anyway, Jen, why don't you share what this week's prompt is and then share your sprint with us?
Well, since today was a Fourth Friday free-for-all, I chose 5 words. And our 5 words were bury, minister, hemisphere, friendly, attractive. And I am proud to say I used all 5.
Well, of course you did. When I read those words, I was like, this is so in Jen's like genre. Like I could write a scene with these 5 words about your characters. So I was like, did she hand select these words?
And I only wrote 320 words, but still I'm happy. It's fine. And again,
good job.
it didn't do anything major. It's not a major like thing, but I'm back in Marnie's world for those of you that are following along with Marnie.
Oh, yay! With
And
Mr. Boss.
Yep.
Yeah.
Marnie sat still as Mr. Boss ministered the ointment onto the abrasion on her knee. He was completely focused on the task. He was so completely focused on the task that it gave her an opportunity to study him more closely. From this angle, she could see almost the entirety of his head. Unlike Stephen, Mr. Boss didn't seem to be balding in the slightest. His dark brown hair was thick, very thick, the kind that beckoned you to bury your fingers in it. And Marnie Marnie clenched her fist lest her body betray her. This is so not edited. Though she was loath to admit it, he was an attractive man. She couldn't see them now, but she knew his eyes were deep brown, pools of chocolate that laughed even when the rest of his face fought to remain stoic. They were the friendly part of his face, and she had often found herself more than a little uncomfortable when they stared her down. But if she were being honest, she liked being trapped by Mr. Boss's gaze. He had a way of seeing through her that she both hated and loved at the same time. Loved? In what hemisphere should she find anything lovable about this man? Hadn't he humiliated her on more than one occasion in front of the entire staff? Hadn't he made it clear that she was a failure at her job and that she should quit? She should hate this man. Then why was she enjoying this moment alone with him as he gently touched her wound? I don't think I've been stared at for this long in quite a while, Mr. Boss said, interrupting her thoughts. What are you thinking about? Nothing, really. Mr. Boss lifted his eyes to lock onto her. You're lying. Could he read minds? Marnie started to panic. Had she said something out loud without realizing it? I'm not, she argued weakly. He nodded slowly. Yes, you are. 3, 2, 1.
Oh, man.
That's all you get.
Jen, I would like to pay you what I hope is a huge compliment for a romance writer in that your male characters are not cookie cutter romance leading men. Like, it's not like you have one kind of guy that your women fall for. They are all distinct characters. Like, your leading men have personalities that are lovable, but in totally different ways.
That is a huge compliment. Thank you, Jamie. I really appreciate that.
Really good job. Like, your character, like I get the names confused, but I know, and I'll be like, he's the one who did blah, blah, blah. And they are distinct people
Awesome.
in my mind. So really good work there.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I really hate romances that have these perfect men that always say the right thing and always do exactly what makes the woman swoon and all that. And I really like that they're flawed and there's misunderstandings because that's real.
It's more fun to have flawed guys. Like that's part of the fun. It's like it is a challenge to write a man who is full of flaws, yet you're still rooting for him. Like that's what I'm always trying to do. So I really appreciate that. Yeah. Maria says, here's the words bury and minister, and automatically thinks of my vicar husband doing funerals. Yeah, you would write something totally different, right?
Same.
Shell says, great use of hemispheres. Thank you. Maria said, great job. Appreciate that. Barbara says, killing us with cliffhangers and agree about heroes. Yeah. Thanks. Appreciate that, ladies.
Really good. I like the Marnie stories. It's interesting. Like, you and Tina both are writing in a different like the same kind of worlds when we do these sprints and things. And
Mhm.
I'm just like, when are we going to get a whole book of this all the time, every time that these things happen? And I kind of know the answer in Tina's case, but I know for you, Jen, it's like, put it on the list of all the other books I want
I
to write.
know.
And it's like,
I know.
but when are we going to get like this? When are we going to get her happily ever after? Right? Do
I
you know
know.
what I mean? And so
Yeah,
it's
but
just really tricky.
I have to keep writing in this world and then the other world that I'm writing in. Otherwise, I would have can you imagine how many story ideas I would have if I kept writing just random new stuff? Like, it would kill me.
Yes.
I would be
Yes,
dead
I
right
can.
now because I would be so stressed out. So, thank you.
Really good.
Thanks.
All right. Well, I'll go next so that it's not too much talky all in a row of Jamie's voice. All right. And Maria, this has nothing to do with your husband.
Oops, sorry.
The minister, see, he's a minister, not a vicar.
Same thing.
The minister blotted his face and neck with a well-used hanky as he spoke about the loving Heavenly Father whom he claimed was welcoming my mama into his kingdom at this moment with open arms. I stood there in my feet pinching shoes, wearing the only dress I had decent enough to wear in public that was so small on me I dared not take a deep enough breath to really cry for my mama, even if I felt the urge to do so. All my tears, it seemed, had turned to dust that irritated my eyes and rendered them thankfully weepy, so that onlookers wouldn't know it wasn't sadness I wrestled with at Mama's graveside, but anger. I was angry at God, angry at him for too little money and too much hard liquor, and for hot days that must be endured, and mostly for taking my mama from me. What was going to happen to us now without Mama to browbeat our off-drunk father into going out to find work and to turn our meager provisions into something that would fill our bellies, if only for a few hours? The minister was still going on about the goodness of God, even though I thought he surely must hate God too for making him a man so heavy, immobile, and prone to sweat, and then plopping him in a life in this here place with his harsh winters and human and unforgiving summers. Yet he spoke of God's goodness and kindness and mercy and love. I couldn't hear any more of it, so I went to the place in my mind where I kept the memory of our last Christmas with Mama, when Papa's friends had come to call and brought along a fiddle and a jaw harp, and one had taken up a jug to blow into, and we'd had music in the house for the first time since I could remember. I'd never heard my Papa play fiddle, but after the men had been drinking a while, Papa was handed the bow and the magical sound device, and from those usually shaking hands came the most controlled melody we'd heard played all night. I remember a look in Mama's eyes as she watched Papa play that I'd never seen before or since. She was proud of my Papa, I realized. It had come time to say our last goodbye, and Papa now used that same shaking hand to throw a handful of dirt across Mama's casket. I wanted to scream out my rage, but instead I balled my fist, managing to keep the words in my throat. Sissy tugged at my sleeve, and I realized I'd stayed longer than I ought. It was time to be following the church folks back to the luncheon they'd prepared for us. "Will we be all right?" Sissy whispered, and I knew from then on I'd have to keep hiding my rage for her sake. "We'll be all right for sure," I said, hugging her to my side as we ambled along. But I didn't feel sure about anything at all, other than the fact that if God existed, he wasn't a good God at all.
Oh, Jamie. I'm so glad I did not have to follow you. Poor Tina. Um, okay, I have so many thoughts, and so every sentence was so good, and then the next sentence was better than the next sentence. Like, these characters, I love these characters. These are the same ones that were, like, huddled together in the storm, right? In the house, and, again, like, you gave me a huge compliment about, when are we gonna get this happily ever after? When are we gonna get this story? Like, it's so good, Jamie. I love these characters. I wanna know what happens to these little girls. Like, just so well done. Oh my gosh. How do you do that in 15 minutes?
I do not know. Thank you. I appreciate the compliment. It was
The only thing that I can
yeah.
say that's different from what Jen said is if you don't write this and publish it so I can read it, I'm gonna be really upset.
Yeah. Like, from the pinching of the toes and the dress that was too tight, like, from then on, it was the one thing after another, just I was there, I understand everything that's going on, this poor girl, like, all the details, and Liz, this is another Liz said, and I agree, "The minister must hate God too. I love her reasons why he would." Yes, so well done, like, who would ever look at that situation that way? You just did so good.
And
Michelle says,
that
"Well."
little girl and her deep, deep thoughts that,
Yeah.
like, also show her character
Mhm.
so well. I don't know, it's just amazing.
It shows her pain as well as her flaws, right? Like,
Mhm.
we're seeing, like, Oh, this is so good. Shell
Thank you.
says, "Wow, Jamie, so poignant." Look at the comments are just flying in. Maria says, "Wow, Jamie, that was so amazing, so evocative. You are so immersive. You say like 3 words and I can picture it immediately. So beautiful and raw." And yes. And then she said all caps, "Wow." Barbara says, "Yep, gets the mind wanting to know. Great details." And you get a heart from Leah. So yeah, so well done.
I appreciate that. This little girl is very real to me. And
Mhm.
honestly, the thing that really keeps me from writing this, or a lot of things actually, is the idea that I'm pretty lazy when it comes to research and things. And I have a very specific idea of who this girl is and when she lives, but I don't know if the things I would write about her would match. So it's
Mhm.
possible that I would just have to write it and then send it to somebody to try to catch me out if I do something that's like historically wrong, because
Mhm.
of when I believe that she was alive and the things that I believe she was enduring and living through. I'm not sure if it would really match with what a critic of that time period, like a historical
Right.
person, might have take umbrage to what I put.
How about this? How about if you don't make it into a book? How about if you start doing it as Bella? I think you'll
Yeah,
kinda have
maybe.
if you'll have less criticism because there'll be people there that are just absorbing the story and wanting more like we are. I mean, I think you're gonna be historically accurate enough if you just kinda allude to things that are happening and you won't have to put all those, like, background details that would be expected in novel. In Bella, I
Mm.
think people are gonna be looking for the story, and I would love to see, like, what you could do with Bella over there with your writing. This and I think this would be a perfect example. And
And
every
in
week
my
you could just
mind,
write a sprint and
oh,
throw it up
sorry.
there.
In my mind, your story could really be timeless because you could go to like places like Appalachia today and find people living that this story could fit into that
Mm,
context.
good
Yeah,
point.
that's who she is. That's where she lives.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean it could be timeless and you could just might not be specific enough for it to be any one time and people will still love it. And in there they can decide for themselves what time period it is.
Yeah, and how much yummier if as you're writing it, like, you throw in things that let us know, like, "Oh my gosh, this is happening right now." Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, so good, Jamie.
I
Um,
appreciate that, everybody. I love words of affirmation. My love tank is feeling very full.
and Maria suggested, yeah, you could write the story, then try to add the historical context research in the edit. That's what I did for her newsletter novel, she says. So that's a good idea too. So yeah, I love it. I want more. Basically, that's the best compliment I can give you. Like I cannot wait to hear more of that. So
So appreciate it.
yeah. All
Well,
right.
Tina, you still need to share your little sprinteroo with us. How did you handle this prompt?
Okay, I don't think I used any of the words. um
You told us you weren't going to either, like at the beginning when we were gonna write. That's
because
hilarious.
I'm writing, I'm only giving myself permission to write in in this world on at this 15-minute sprint, and we didn't get to do it last week, and so this has been burning to get out, and so I
Ah.
just started writing and I forgot all about the words. Sometimes I try to fit them in there somehow, but
Well, that's fine, because just so the audience knows, our goal with this is to inspire you to take 15 minutes to write something.
Right.
A lot of people say, I want to be a writer, and they listen to a lot of podcasts and they read a lot of books about how to be a writer, but they don't do any actual writing. So if you would at least spend 15 minutes a week doing the sprint with us, that's all the writing I'm doing right now. And I'm glad that I'm doing it. We do have a book, also 30 Days of Writing Sprint Prompts, which will encourage you to become a writer. Also, writing every day for 30 days is one of the best ways to develop a writing habit. So, anyway, sorry to jump on you there, Tina, but I just wanted to
you're good.
encourage our audience also to sprint.
Okay. Nikolai pulled his hood over his head. The cloak he wore was several sizes too big, but that only made it easier to hide inside.
Mm.
He stood just inside the mouth of an alley and watched the street. In the glow of a street lamp, a man dismounted a black stallion, tethering it to a pole, and headed to the door of the White House pub. The cloak the man wore, very much like Nikolai's, hid his face from view. But just before he opened the door, he pulled the hood back, revealing long silver hair and piercing blue eyes that, even in the dark, seemed to shine out with a light of their own. Though he was hidden in the shadows, Nikolai shrank back inside his hood and counted as he inhaled. 1, 2, 3. then counted again as he exhaled, his racing heart calmed with the exercise. The door closed behind the man, and Nikolai slumped back against the wall. He'd spent months searching, though many had warned him against it, warned him of the power this man yielded and the danger to those who dared confront him. Nikolai had ignored them all. It didn't matter what happened. It only mattered that this man was the only one who could tell Nikolai what he needed to know. And if he couldn't know it, what was the point of going on anyway? Now, as he waited for the man to emerge once more, his courage seemed to be failing him. His knees felt like jello, and his heart skipped wildly in his chest. He rubbed his damp palms against his pants and tried to resist the urge to heave his dinner onto the pavement. I can do this, he muttered to himself. I will do this, he said more boldly. He balled his hands into fists as the white-haired man emerged from the pub, once again pulling the hood over his head, and began to untether his horse. Nikolai sucked in his breath and marched toward the man, removing his own hood as the man turned to face him, revealing his own head of long silver hair and piercing blue eyes that shone even in darkness. Where is my mother? Nikolai said, revealing the blade he'd hidden beneath his cloak. Tell me now, or go to meet your creator.
Ooh.
Wow, yeah, you made it just now, Nikolai, that's not the same male character that we've been seeing, right?
No.
So it's a totally new guy in the story. All right, so now I have all kinds of questions, like how does he fit in and what's going on? And again, well done, Tina. Like you gave me like enough like visual and got me involved in enough that even when my camera fell off the stand and I knocked her and everything, I was still totally engaged. So well done.
I saw that and I managed to keep reading.
I'm really sorry.
Like I'm really a professional now.
The show must go on.
That's awesome.
Wow. Okay. So I just want to, so they both have these same characteristics.
Right.
So this is like hint to this world. This is really, it's engaging, like Jen said, the way that you're dropping clues for us. And I appreciate that. And I like that you're showing the actual internal conflict and thought process. Like, what is this guy thinking or feeling? Because that helps you to understand the character a little bit more. Because not everybody is the same, and that seems like a really basic thing to say. But I think a lot of times, especially if you grow up in a world where everybody is a lot like you and people do have a lot of the same opinions and beliefs, you think that everybody thinks the way that you do. And I think having that internal really makes the character seem real.
Thank you.
Lots of comments for you. I love some good conflict. Great, Tina. Barbara says, again with the cliffhangers. Chell says, ooh, wonderful, Tina. And Barbara says, good, Jennifer, you're okay. Yeah, I'm all right. I'm just klutzy. Just me being klutzy. And then
Barbara likes that he's looking for his mom and not his dad. It always seems like people are looking for dad in these books. Yeah, interesting.
The removal of the hoods. I love the dramatic setting. Made it work. That's awesome. Yep, I agree with all that. Good job, Tina.
Thanks.
Yeah, and you said that you got it right in the nick of time. 3, 2, 1, end, right?
Yeah, I put the final explanation or quote mark, and I'm like, oh, I'm done early, and then this is exactly when the timer went off.
Okay, so now that we are done with, can you hear that?
Yeah. Yep.
Sorry. Now that we're done with the sharing of the writing sprints, it's time to talk about what's next. We start our podcast with what's up, and we end our podcast with what's next to find out what's next with all of us beautiful people in our lives. So what's next for you, Miss Tina?
What's next is I'm going to get these edits done, these final edits, and my manuscript up into Amazon and send it out to my advanced team. And again, if you want to be on my advanced team, go to ChristinaCattane.com, sign up for my newsletter. I'll be sending that out tomorrow with the link, or I'll also put the link to join my advanced team in the show notes below on YouTube.
All right. What's next for me is, not a whole lot in the writing world. I am taking a class right now that's consuming a whole lot of my brain space, but I am trying to be diligent about updating the Writing Shorts website. Writing Shorts is where I showcase my work and also use it as a landing page for my author newsletter. So if you head over to www.writingshorts.net, you will see all of the writing sprints that we do on this show have been archived there, with the exception of the ones that I haven't gotten put up yet because that's all me. And also several short stories that come out in my author newsletter are archived on the Writing Shorts website. So there's all kinds of free short stories for you to read online if you go over to writingshorts.net, and I hope you will do so. What's next for you, Miss Jen?
Well, I have writing and marketing things I'm doing right now. So for writing, I did a bunch of handwriting when I was visiting my mom one day, and because my laptop is no longer portable, and I've lost it.
Oh,
So I'm
what?
not sure what notebook it was in. I'm looking through. I have raise your hand if you have like 100 notebooks in your house. Yeah. And so I thought it was in a certain one, and because I wrote 2 different days, and I thought it was in the same one. I took the writing and I typed it in, and then the rest of it's gone. I don't know where it is. Maybe I ripped it out. I don't know. So I've got to find that. That's my next thing for my writing and editing. And then marketing, I am going to continue working on my Amazon ads and hopefully figure out why they're not delivering. They are technically delivering, but they're not getting put in front of anybody. So I'm really going to work this next week to try to get some traction and basically just keep making new ads and see if I can jumpstart my sales that way. So that's what's
Yes.
next.
And the series that you're currently promoting is the Love and Lansing series?
Yes, and so,
Mhm.
book 1 is free, not the paperback, but the, ebook is free on all platforms, and yeah, so Searching for Anna is free, and if you want to read book 2, you can get it free for signing up for my newsletter at jennifercarltong.com. All right, Leah says her what's next, grinding to the finish, seeing how the ending is coming together for book 10. Good for you, Leah. Liz says, what's next? Sending her friend notes on the book cover she's creating for her. Ooh, that's exciting.
That's
That's
so
always fun.
awesome you have a friend to do that for you. How amazing. How exciting for Liz. Her book is at an editor and her cover's being made. This is her first book, isn't it?
I don't know. I think it is. Is
Mm.
it Liz? Let us know in the chat if this is your first or not.
And
So
then yeah, so
we have
I
all
appreciate
levels in our chat. We have people that are just starting to think about writing and they stumble across us. We have people that have a few books out, or just getting ready to publish a first one. A few people with a few books out. Then we have people like Leah who've got like several books out in different series, and yeah. This is the
Ooh,
second book.
yes, I
So.
want to know. Does she write under her own name? Listen to me, like I'm all nosy now.
No, I would like to know too.
Yeah, like how do you write? What do you write? What's it all about, Elfie?
Yeah, for
Let us
everybody
know.
who's in our chat, you should be chatting as your author name if you have a different author name. That way we can all find each other and people might happen across your books and buy them. So,
All right. So I think that that's it for today. Any final words from either of you? No? All right. Once again, a big shout out to Miss Rhonda. We're missing her today. And we thank all of you for tuning in. That concludes this episode of the Christian Indie Writers Podcast. Until next time, may your pen be prolific, may your deadlines be met, and may all of your words honor Christ. Bye now.